Welcome to MSL Talk with Tom Caravela, a podcast specifically designed for MSLs and all things field medical. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. My guest today is Madeline McCory, and she is a senior medical science liaison with a company called Big Health. And she talks about everything that we need to know about digital therapeutics. She is really smart. It's a great conversation. I learned a lot. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Instagram and connect with me on LinkedIn if you haven't already. Love to hear from you guys. And check us out on MSL Talk Live, which is on Clubhouse. It's the first Tuesday of every month at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for joining me. Hey, Maddie, how you doing today? Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I am excited. So for those of you, just to get you guys all up to speed, Maddie and I kind of sort of met at a conference. Actually, she met some folks on my team. I didn't actually get to meet her, unfortunately, but we talked after, and she had mentioned this idea of doing a podcast about digital therapeutics. And I was like, that sounds awesome, because I don't really know that much about it. I kind of think I have an idea of what it is. So we're going to talk about it. But before we do that, why don't you do a quick intro so you can tell everybody who you are and where you're from and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone that's listening. My name is Madeline, or Maddie McCory. I'm originally from Nairobi, Kenya, and I moved to the States when I was really young and grew up primarily on the West Coast in California and Washington. I have my doctorate of pharmacy degree from MCPHS University out in Boston. And after school, I did a postdoctoral fellowship through the MCPHS University Fellowship Program. And that postdoc was in medical affairs and project management. And as we fast forward to where I'm at today, I'm currently a senior medical science liaison at Big Health.
Wow. And I have to tell you, haven't really known Maddie long, but the times and the couple of conversations I've had with her, you guys are in for a treat, because she is super smart and really, really articulate. So I'm really looking forward to learning about this digital therapeutic space. But let me ask you, so that was an awesome introduction. It was quick. How did you actually transition into industry? How did you get into the role that you're in now?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fun question, because during pharmacy school, I was working at Boston Children's Hospital, and I was convinced I was going to do a residency and focus on peds. But towards the end of my training, I actually took a class. I think it was called Introduction to the Biopharmaceutical Industry at MCPHS University. And at some point, a medical science liaison, or an MSL, came in, and they talked about their role. And I remember sitting there in class and being like, I want to do what she's doing. Everything she talked about just sounded fantastic and really fit my personality and my background. And so from that point, I shifted, and I wanted to do a fellowship. And so I went out there, I went to ASHP. I did all of those interviews, and I was lucky enough to land a fellowship in medical affairs and project management down in Dallas. And from that point on, after I was done with that, I moved on into the MSL role, and I worked primarily within immunology and dermatology. And I supported products at BMS, Novartis, and orthodermatologics. And now I've made this big transition, and I'm working in the mental health space, the mental health care space. And I work actually at a digital therapeutic startup company, a tech company, which, like I said earlier, is called Big Health.
That's an awesome story. We talk a lot about that on the podcast, about how important it is to position yourself and go the extra mile and go through the networking and try to get a fellowship or an internship. So, you're living proof. You did it, and now you're an MSL. How do you like it so far? Just out of curiosity.
I love being at MSL. It's a very fluid role. I've worked in a couple of therapeutic areas. For me, I'm an introvert a little bit, so I love working from home. I love traveling solo. I love presenting and talking to people one-on-one. So I truly think I fit into the role and reflect what the role is. And I love mentoring. So I really love getting people excited and the younger generation excited about the MSL role and kind of what that path may look like getting into industry.
Well, I think you're going to be awesome. And I know you're going to be a really good ambassador for the role. I could just tell. That's my, yeah, that's my opinion. So let's jump into this because I'm dying to learn more about this digital therapeutics space. So let's jump right into it. What is it, and what can you tell us about it as far as an overview?
Yeah, and now I love talking about digital therapeutics. Now that I'm in the field, so digital therapeutics, they're not a drug or a biologic or wellness app. A lot of people confuse that with the digital therapeutic. It's actually a brand new product category. And the simplest definition I can give it is that a digital therapeutic delivers evidence-based interventions in a digital format that's going to be through either a smartphone, a tablet, or even a computer. And digital therapeutics tend to have a robust clinical evidence and real world outcomes. And I think that's what makes it stand apart versus a wellness app or some of those other definitions. They really do go through a rigorous development process that's driven by the latest science, right? So they can be used as a standalone product, or they can be used together as an adjunct to a medication or even a device. And some of them actually do require a prescription from a provider in order to have access to them or to use them. And we call those a PDT, or a prescription digital therapeutic. But really the bottom line here is that digital therapeutics are health interventions that really do help solve problems for patients. And they do so by delivering that evidence-based, clinically evaluated software to really help treat and manage and prevent a broad spectrum of different diseases and disorders.
Interesting. All right. I got a million questions.
I know it's a mouthful.
Yeah, there's like a million questions. So it sounds like this is, you mentioned the word lifestyle, because at first I'm like, this sounds very similar to a lifestyle app where you're getting advice through an app, but it sounds like it's also a lot more than that. So can you elaborate on like maybe how it's different from a lifestyle app?
Yeah, I can't stress enough how digital therapeutics shouldn't be confused with the wellness or lifestyle app, which are absolutely great. We can all go on the App Store and download some of these things, learn some meditation and things of that nature. And you can really think of these wellness apps and these lifestyle apps kind of like a vitamin or a supplement. We all need to take those, right, as prophylactic treatment, but they're not treating immediate underlying health challenges like a prescription drug would that you're picking up at the pharmacy. So if you actually take a step back from this, from that and look at the broadest outlook, digital health is really an umbrella term that's going to encompass all of these things. So we're talking about wearable technology, remote monitoring, telehealth, wellness apps. But then there are subsets of digital medicine and digital therapeutics that sit within or underneath that umbrella definition. So then we have to ask the question of, what actually differentiates a digital therapeutic within digital health, right? We have the digital health umbrella. Now, what is a digital therapeutic within that umbrella? And really the answer to that is that the software itself delivers the intervention, just like the active ingredient in a pharmaceutical medication is going to deliver that through the mechanism of action. So the software content and the algorithms within that are actually what are providing the treatment to either help manage or treat the disease.
So this advice, let's call it, is coming from a software application. It's not coming from a key opinion leader or a physician.
Yeah, and it depends on, the digital therapeutic company or technology you're working with. So I can speak from our example. Our digital therapeutics deliver cognitive behavioral techniques, which are the first line recommendation for a lot of mental health conditions and what you'd traditionally get from a therapist in life practice, right? So now that we have the software that's delivering those cognitive behavioral techniques and initiating those behavioral changes for insomnia and anxiety in our case, but CBT can be used across different mental health conditions. But that's just an example of how that software is transitioning that healthcare that you would normally get maybe live in a way that is in a software, in a way that you can do it at home, on your computer, on your phone at any time of the day. That's going to get you the same changes and the same clinical outcomes that you might get in person.
And you mentioned there could potentially be a prescription attached to this. So is part of the advice that comes from this digital therapeutics application software, in addition to this, whatever the recommendation is, there's a prescription for XYZ product. So does it combine a bunch of different ingredients into the recommended care, including the use of, or maybe a prescription for medication?
Yeah, and again, that will depend on the company. So our company, our therapeutics are not don't have that FDA clearance with that prescription tied with it. There are other digital therapeutic companies that do, meaning you have to go see your provider. They have to basically write a prescription for that therapeutic, and then you're able to download it and utilize it. So that can come in a combination of things. So you could be getting that with medicine as well. You could be getting it as a standalone. And it's really between the provider and the patient to decide what that's going to look like when we're talking about a digital therapeutic that's prescribed. But when we're talking about a digital therapeutic that doesn't go through that pathway and has different ways of getting to the patient, they can also, again, like I said earlier, utilize that in a way that's in conjunction with the medicine, depending on the therapeutic area, or alone, or with a device.
Got you. So then how does this get to the patient? How does someone find out about the digital therapeutics that you guys provide?
Yeah, and that's the challenge I think we're all in right now, which is really exciting, I think, on our end, especially in medical affairs. It's the education piece. It's kind of a brand new category and kind of brand new to the public, but COVID has really helped accelerate that for many reasons. So a large part of my role is really educating the community, educating, for my sake, PCPs or providers and the general public, because they're the ones that tend to treat mental health conditions and tend to prescribe these medications up front, obviously psychiatrists as well. And so there's a huge education gap, an unmet need that I would say at this point, where we are getting out there just like any other MSL and another company and educating, although from the very bottom up, because I might get in front of a provider and they're like, I don't know what a digital therapeutic is. How does that even fit into, what I'm doing? And so I'm talking about ground up education, understanding the clinical guidelines and understanding where digital therapeutics and their outcomes, what are the outcomes? How are they measured? And how does that fit into this? And, do I really see clinical efficacy here? Educating on all of that. So I would say it's really an uphill battle at this point, but, the education is out there. Payers are starting to understand digital therapeutics. There are digital formularies that are popping up all throughout the nation. So that adaptation is happening, but we're in the middle of it. And again, that educational piece is so crucial at this moment.
So you mentioned payers, because that's one of the things that, again, is going through my mind is who pays for this? Is this something that you have your third party payers, your insurance companies, and the powers that be, is this something that that a patient can get reimbursed for, or that they can actually have coverage for? Or is this one of those too early, so everything's out of pocket kind of thing?
So the fun answer to that is that we're all kind of keeping that information close to our chest because there is no standard pathway at the moment. So I don't want to say we're competing, but we're all trying to lay down that pathway. And so in that case, a lot of that is kind of internal information, how our company is doing it and how maybe our competitors are doing it, because there is not one pathway at the moment. We all kind of have our different ways that we're reaching out and getting the product to the patients, whether it's through the payer or anything like that. So I can't directly answer that question, but I would say that, we are all working at it, and it might look a little bit different, but we're trying to lay down that foundation and figure out like what the guidelines are for that and what the general pathway is for that.
Interesting. So you're an MSL, and like most other, if not all other MSLs, you're responsible for engaging with and having conversations with key opinion leaders and healthcare professionals. But do you also have any responsibility for the patient care community? Because it sounds like there's reasons for both. So what's your real main role? Is it to educate physicians, or do you have any responsibility for educating, families and patients?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I actually joined this company, medical affairs was an N of one. It was just my manager. She's the director of medical affairs.
Mhm.
And so when I joined, a lot of my counterparts or my colleagues are actually psychologists by training in the clinical side of things. And so it was interesting to join a company that didn't really understand or know, the capabilities of an MSL. And so there has been education even internally on what we're able to do. They had a written down definition of an MSL, but they didn't even know like where our hands can reach and what the type, all the different hats we could wear. So to that point, I'm sitting on calls where I'm talking to different accounts, I'm talking to HR leaders, I'm talking to physicians, to payers, all different types of groups. At the moment, in terms of patient education, that comes through the prescribers or any of the therapist or anyone that is taking on the digital therapeutic. We definitely take the time to educate them, just like you would with a drug product that's launching. You would educate a doctor on your product so they understand how to use it. They understand the product labeling, the efficacy, the safety, all of those same things, so that when the patient is getting the access to it, they understand what it's for, how they're supposed to utilize it, and what it's helping them manage.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned COVID, and you said that COVID was obviously an accelerator for this, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Was this a concept that just spawned out of the COVID pandemic because there was a need to have additional modalities of treatment, or am I making that up?
What I'll say to that for my first answer for that is, they were around, digital therapeutics were around before COVID, but COVID was an obvious accelerator for that. And I think during COVID, we're, technically still in the pandemic, whatever your opinion may be, but, I think it's no longer a luxury. Digital therapeutics, digital health is no longer a luxury in the sense that it might have been before. Now it's a necessity and part of our healthcare system. And the pandemic has really highlighted within the medical community a lot of these unmet needs, and I think technology is helping fix or close some of those gaps. So yeah, I would say obviously I think for a lot of sectors, but especially in medicine and in technology, COVID has really accelerated development, and we've all kind of scrambled to fill in those gaps where we need to, just because of how our environment has shifted tremendously. And so it's an exciting time to be in telemedicine, in any type of digital medicine and digital therapeutics. And I think it's really opened up during COVID, and really shifted some eyes over to, what are these company doings? Where do they help fill the gap? And, can we keep patients from going into the hospital all of the time? Can we help them manage their diseases at home? And patients want solutions. We're humans, and in the generation we're in, we to use our phone. We want convenience at home. We want to take control of our health and help manage it day to day, and have that real time, update, and that real time management of our diseases.
So this is something that obviously sounds like it's app-based. So you would access this through your phone, through a tablet, through your computer?
Yeah, absolutely. So it depends on which company you're talking about. But again, from my experience with our company, so the smartphone and the tablet and the computer are the three main categories. But obviously, smartphone is always the easiest. You can transport it. You can use it in bed. You can use it on your couch. You can use it any time of the day or night. You don't have to open up your computer for that. So it tends to be more so smartphones that are utilized. But yes, they have those capabilities.
Yeah, because I think I could see one of the challenges being, in order to really kind of get this out there to a lot of different patient populations, especially if we're talking about, for example, you're on the neuro side. So if we talk about folks with dementia, Alzheimer's, the elderly, there's challenges as it relates to the use and the adaptation of technology. I just know from, my parents are getting older. They're certainly very good with their phones and tablets and things like that. But some of their friends just they haven't embraced technology. They couldn't you can give them a phone and say, here, order an Uber, and they would think that they were, ordering food or takeout, or they would have no idea what that even meant. So is
Yeah.
that a challenge? Is the technical piece of it still a barrier for this sort of advancement in medicine?
Yeah, it can be. And I always say there's no silver bullet for anything really. So including us, and a lot of physicians, a lot of people, including you, including I, we have questions for these digital therapeutics and digital medicine, and they're not answers yet, right? We're in the now of this transformation. So there might not be an answer at the moment, but I will tell you this, digital therapeutics, especially when we're talking about mental health and depression, anxiety, insomnia, and getting access to care, it really does help that with individuals that maybe live in areas that they don't have a therapist nearby. They live maybe in the middle of a rural area. They don't have the means to get to the hospital, to a therapist, whatever it may be. Individuals like millennials like me or Gen Z who have a strong affinity to technology. There are people, and especially when we talk about equity and access, there are people that really do benefit from digital therapeutics. It's not going to be for everyone, just like medicine is not for everyone. Certain things are not for everyone, but there are individuals that utilize them, that want them. There's a consumer base for them, and they can supplement your healthcare, or they can be standalone. So absolutely, those challenges you brought up are there. It's not going to help fix every problem. It's not going to address every disease state or every therapeutic area. But we're all growing, and I think those answers will slowly be answered as we move forward.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely novice at this. I don't really know much about this space, which is one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on. And I know that there's a lot of people that I'm sure are listening to this that feel the same way. So like, how is this going? What's the impact on the pharmaceutical industry? I mean, is this being widely accepted? Is it taking off? Is this like the next thing? And I mean that sincerely. I know that you're probably biased because you're in the space, but you see it, and you probably get the reaction from whether it's the KOL community or the patient care community, the patient community. What are you seeing? Is this thing really taking off?
Yeah. And, I laughed because 4 months ago when I applied for this job, I honestly didn't even understand the digital medicine community or the industry. And I didn't know the definition of a digital therapeutic. And I didn't know that it was this deep and the clinical evidence was this deep. So you're not the only one. I'm sure there's people listening that are also in the same boat, but it's really an exciting time in the pharmaceutical industry when it comes to, fast-paced digital innovation and capabilities, when we're talking about disruptive technologies and AI or artificial intelligence. And pharma has kind of always lagged behind when we talk about digital innovation, but now everyone's trying to keep up, right? No one wants to be left behind. And this includes digital therapeutics. And we've actually seen an increase in partnerships between pharmaceutical companies and tech companies who create these digital therapeutics. And there are some big pharma names out there. You can Google them, but they're collaborating with some tech companies to really sit there and develop and study and launch these digital therapeutics together. So they don't want to be left behind as well. And there is this partnership and this collaboration that we're seeing. And I really think that pharma is seeing digitals as a way to meet its customers' needs and to really help keep costs down, because we know it takes a long time and lots of money to bring a new drug to market. So digital therapeutics can, from that aspect, really bring down some of those cost savings and those efficiencies. So I really do think that, digital is going to be a part of the pharmaceutical companies' development and production, just the same way we see medical devices today. There is adaptation happening, there's collaboration happening. I think the last estimate I saw was that this is going to be a $75 billion market by 2025. All of our companies are getting millions in funding right now. Like it is, I from my eyes, I know I am a little bit biased, but on paper, it's speaking for itself. It's really taking off. It's really exploding, and people are reaching out every day. We're getting requested, and I have to meet with physicians and providers that are saying, how do I get access to this? How do I help get my patients to utilize this? This sounds really interesting. Can I learn more about these digital therapeutics? So we're getting those proactive questions. And so to me as an MSL, that means that these providers are looking for other options in their toolbox besides just medication upfront for their patients.
Wow. So it is definitely, I mean, from that answer, it sounds like it's definitely blown up a bit.
Yes.
And I almost feel silly. I'm almost like, geez, how do I not know a lot more about this? Because it seems like it's going on right under our nose. I don't feel like after you said that, it's like clearly I'm not releasing some kind of secret. The word's out.
Yeah.
I just
No, you're not the
didn't
only
know.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. So I mean, obviously the wheels are spinning in my head as a recruiter, being in the recruiting business.
Mhm.
I see opportunity. When I say opportunity, I mean there's opportunities in the industry for pharmaceutical companies in partnership, in development, in collaboration, which means opportunity for individuals like yourself and folks similar where there's going to be hiring needs. So do you anticipate, like, are you hearing from, whether it's folks in your company or in other similar companies, the opportunity for expansion because of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I did when I received this role was kind of start looking at competitors and seeing if they have MSL teams, and some of them do, and we're all expanding. I know our team, like I said, I was in the first MSL they hired, the second medical affairs personnel. We're expanding this year. We have plans in the books to make an full MSL team, and I know other companies are doing the same thing. And with that being said, there really is an increased need to educate, the medical and broader community about digital therapeutics. And of course, that's exactly where medical affairs, the functionality and the MSL role fit right in beautifully. So, we have the opportunity to put our foot in the door in the tech company, and we will when we're there. We're absolutely there already. So I think it's exciting to educate people on digital therapeutics. It's exciting to give MSLs, especially in medical affairs, another role that they can fit into, especially if they're interested in kind of expanding outside of the regular cross collaboration that we're used to, with regulatory, with marketing. Now it's even beyond that, right? We're working with software engineers, storytellers and designers. So it's really fun to be able to have these conversations with people that different professionals that I never would have, I don't think, communicated with or worked with on a project before. So for anyone that's, interested in kind of opening up that door and exploring a little bit more what the MSL role may look like or medical affairs may look like outside of our traditional medicines, I think this is a great opportunity, and they absolutely need us as they figure out, what medical affairs is, what MSLs bring to the table. The need is there. And I think you're going to see more job opportunities popping up all over to get in these roles.
Well, I'll tell you, if there's anyone out there that's in some kind of governing body that has anything to do with digital therapeutics, whether it's your company or some other entity, like, you're really doing an amazing job describing what this is. And I'm pumped up. And I think people that are listening to this are pretty pumped up because it sounds exciting. It sounds like it's opened up another, well, it's not a new category, because again, you said before that this has been around for a while, but the digital space is clearly, anything digital is hot. Anything technology, innovation, where we can do things better in our profession, whatever that might be, is obviously important. This brings things to a different level in the pharmaceutical industry. And it's exciting, I think, for the medical affairs community, because you just mentioned what it might look like as far as companies that are going to need MSL teams for this sort of initiative and for these sorts of companies. So I'm excited, and I think that people are learning a lot. So what do you think I mean, you've been doing this for, not for a long period of time, although it sounds like you've been doing this forever.
Thank you.
What do you think the future looks like? I mean, if you had to venture a guess as to what the next year to 2 years to 5 years might look like in this space, and what it's going to do to kind of change the face of maybe the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think we all know this. There are advances in AI and mobile technology quite literally almost every day. And now COVID has increased the role of digital therapeutics. So the sheer velocity of the digital revolution means that in recent years, we've seen more advances in capabilities, but also increased application in areas of previously unmet need, like I said earlier. So we have seen multiple therapeutic areas like the management of metabolic syndromes, and psychiatric disorders, like where I work in, that have been transformed dramatically by digital therapeutics. So I really leave you with, I invite your listeners to take time, regardless of the therapeutic area, to research digital therapeutics and the digital medicine landscape and see how they complement or really overlap with their practice or expertise. Like I said earlier, this is $1 billion industry. It's only growing. We're in the now of building it out, launching and scaling some of these solutions that are really going to help transform outcomes. So I think it's a great opportunity now to get in from the ground up, especially when we're talking about startup companies and acquisitions are starting to happen, just like we've seen in big pharma and how that looks like, and partnerships are taking off. So this is like the best moment to really try something new out, see where it goes, help build out the future, help with the guidelines, see where the FDA takes us, because that's another question mark at the moment is what does that clearance look like, the FDA guidance, and where they're really going to categorize that and lay the foundation out for that. So if you're, someone who's interested in being in a new area, I think this is just honestly exploding, and it's going to be such an exciting time for all of us.
Maddie, you're awesome.
Thank you.
You really are. And I look forward to seeing all the great things that you're going to do in your career. And we definitely should have a follow-up episode and maybe a year from now, like a year later, what has transpired in digital therapeutics. And I bet you it's going places, and I know you are. So I'll be rooting for you. So thanks again for joining me and for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Tom, for having me on here. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you soon. We're going to do this again. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe so that you don't miss episodes in the future, and feel free to leave a rating or a review or a comment. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.